Hello, how are you doing today? Well, here we are, another people analytic project. For this project, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try to build our databases from zero using Figma. You can see I will create the relationships between the databases. So the first one was a sketcher, and this second one, as you can see here, how the databases are going to be created. I will start creating them in Python. You can see here I create an employee ID. I'm going to use an integer for that ID. Then for salary, I'm going to use a float number. And then as you can see, this table is going to have an ID that is going to be a primary key or foreign key to work with another database. If I need to connect information, I can use these keys to connect the tables. And then with SQL query, I can gather the information I need. Let's correct here. Here in Python, I created the databases using the databases created later. And as you can see, employee ID is going to be an integer number. No, this employee is going to be a string. Then the name obviously is a string. Birthday is going to be an object, because for Python dates most of the time are object, but when we convert the data in using datetime, you are going to see that later the type of data is going to be a datetime data. Age is going to be an integer. Gender is going to be a string. For unlicensed, I decided to use a boolean because if I want to later train a machine learning model using a boolean number is going to really help our tasks later. So that's why I'm going to use a boolean value for unlicensed. We continue. Here we are. I don't like this, but it was the only way to fill the data more easily. I create an array of names. Also, I created an array of surnames. You can see these are almost 166 names with surnames. Because I'm going to work with 3 hotels, I'm going to repeat these names, so it's going to be more easily to continue with our work. When we continue, you can see here now that I have the names, the surnames, the gender. Then we are going to create the birthday, the age, and fill the rest of the columns. For the birthday, yes, I established random dates, but those dates is going to be between the working age range. So remember, people can start working at 18, and most of the countries, they stop working at 65, 70 years. And obviously later I took today's days to calculate the age of our employees. We check that we have no null values. We can see that everything is correct. Now we continue. For this database, going to work with 3 hotels. I decided to create a dictionary with the data of each of the hotels and the data I needed. It's more easy. I don't need to mess up things, and it's a way better to work with this data. Hotel number 1. I also created the ID, the name, the location, the day our hotel open, how many stars the hotel have, and the budget they are working with. Do you remember that I have a column in the employee's ID called hotel ID? I use a while loop to connect the hotel ID to the employee's database. So now we have our employees distributed into our 3 hotels. And later, with this ID, I can connect the employees to each of the hotels. So we can continue to the next table. We create our new table. And we're gonna check how many employees we have on license for each of the hotels. We merge the hotel ID and the employee ID to create the workforce ID. For this kind of table, I decided to create a dictionary with the date time when the hotels start operating, and then took that date time to create random dates to simulate when the employees start working at each of the hotels. And again, I created an array with the areas where the employees are working at. So creating these static arrays is more easy to correct any data. Now we create our last table is the employees' wages. This is where we are going to put when we pay our employees for their work. And most of this table is going to be empty, and I only going to put the IDs. Remember, the IDs are the ones who will help us connect the tables. And I will create a new ID for each of the entries in this table, combining the employee ID with the hotel ID, and also I will add the department where they belongs to. So imagine this line is, we know that it's going to belong to the employee with the ID 3272. Is from the hotel from Fuerteventura, and also this salary we are going to pay is from reception and reservations. Yes, for the salaries, here I'm going to use random numbers in both working times. I took working a range of hours. Then hours work, I took around 120 hours to 160 hours. Then I use overtime hours from a range from 5 to 12 overtime hours. So for exceptional cases, you're going to see the gross pay because we don't have deductions by the time. And I decided to put a 3% of deductions. Obviously, it will depends on every country, every legislation, but for the purpose of practicing, I decided to use 3% of deductions. Then the total payment, and later you will see I added the date I pay those salaries. I wanted to use it for Power BI. Then I export all these tables into an Excel file. I decided to put them into one file and different sheets. Why I do this? Remember, I need to fix some data, and also I need to add more data. And sometimes with Python, it's not easy to recreate that, and so this is much better. You can see now that we have the employees table, the 3 hotels table, the hotel composition, when you can see the departments, the active employees each department have, how many employees are having a license. The major problem that I have working with Python when I do random numbers and random dates is that every time I start again the Jupyter notebook, all the data regenerates randomly again. So this is more easy to avoid that data generating randomly over and over again. Now here we have employee wages. In price hour, I create data randomly, also with the overtime hours and the workforce composition. See, if I put this randomly, I'm going to have a lot of head of departments, and I only want one for each of the areas. This was more easy to generate than using random numbers. Okay, I finished all the tables, and then I go back to Python. I am saving each of the database into a variable, and later I combine all the data frames into one to check all the type of data that are stored in the columns. And you will see that Excel converted the data, all those data I have as integer, now they are stored as float numbers, and I don't want that because float numbers those that they have the decimals, and I don't want that. I don't want to have 3 years, comma 0. I want 3 years. I needed to fix those type of data. And I start doing that. I select the data frame. I enter. Here we are going to select the columns we want to change the data. Selecting the columns I wanted to work with, and you will see that I made a mistake here. I have an error, and this was because I don't put the commas at the end of each column I was selecting to. Yes, sometimes this happens. A simple comma, an extra bracket, and you will have an error. Let's continue. You can see that now I'm changing the data type of each of the tables. You will see that I use as type at first, but it changed the data to integer 32 and I wanted integer 64. I know there is a difference between them. I don't remember what, but I'm going to check that out, because when we are talking about computers, it's very different to use 32 than 64. So it's important to keep that in mind. So I only want that each data frame has the correct data type. Because I wanted the integers 64, I changed to Panda to numeric for all of the data frames. The last one, called the method apply. PD is for pandas and to numeric. And okay. Now I call each data frame separately, and you will see that I have the type of data I want to have for each of the type. Here you can see integer 64, integer 64, and integer 64 for total employees. That's the type of data I want to have for my columns. So this is the first step. Now we can start working with Power BI, and also I will start working with MySQL and SQL in order to practice with working with these two for the databases. So I hope you enjoyed this introduction for the new project. I hope you enjoyed. Keep tuned, because we are going to have more interesting things about this data. See you. Bye.